Next is my favorite fears. And this is actually the second time I've done this presentation. I did it for the congregation out in Ripon as well. And it was the day after their art and service auction where they have done this amazing job and raised lots of money. And so that I noticed that they were looking pretty tired. So I'm hoping that you guys will be a livelier audience. I mean, they were very, very nice and kind, but they were just like, you know, I could see their eyelids are drooping. All right, well, thank you all for coming here today. I'm very pleased to be here. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I was raised Unitarian, and my home church is in Charlottesville, Virginia. I spent the early part of my career working for nonprofit organizations, and I was also an organic vegetable farmer for 15 years. I now live in Fond du Lac with my son, Peter. In June of 2015, I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, which had metastasized to my bones. So this is an anniversary for me. 4 years with stage 4. I consider that I'm doing well. Over the years, I've spent a lot of time making changes to my life, including diet, exercise, and most importantly, spirituality. Though my cancer is continuing to progress, it's doing so relatively slowly, and I feel blessed to have this time with my 10-year-old son, Peter, as well as all the other people in my life. I feel deeply that cancer has brought many gifts over the past 4 years. My spiritual work has taken me in the direction of shamanism, although I certainly didn't start out with that goal. In 2016, I had a health crisis in which I was told by my doctors that I might have as little as 3 to 6 months to live. In that time, I started having spiritual dreams that told me to look to the power of nature, and specifically the power of water running underground in time of crisis. So I started meditating up on the ledge, also known as the Niagara Escarpment, in a grotto where I could hear water running under the rocks. That spring, I also began to work with Myron Nashowski, a Madison area shamanic practitioner who many of you have heard speak before. During the past year, I've been taking classes with Myron and learning how I can help people through shamanic practice. Recently, I started a shamanic circle group at the Fond du Lac Center for Spirituality and Healing, and also began seeing private clients, mostly family and friends. I feel called to continue this work for the rest of my life, whether that's long or short. In one of Myron's classes, we learned about the Cherokee Fear Bowl exercise, and that's the basis for my talk today. It's a traditional Native American practice, and I was surprised to find that this simple exercise helped me so much. So here's the basic idea. Write down all of your fears on slips of paper, throw them into a bowl, and for 1 lunar month, full moon to full moon, draw out a slip of paper and work on that fear for the day. During the exercise, you deal with the fear by doing the opposite of that fear. For example, if you fear public speaking, you might sign yourself up to do a presentation for your church. Now, most people react to something they fear by trying to avoid it. We've all heard of the fight or flight response to danger, in which you either run away from the threat or charge into battle. Rarely, a person walks calmly toward their fear and engages with it. This exercise teaches you to do just that. With cancer, as with any life-threatening illness, there is a lot of fear. And yet, typical flight or fight responses don't work all that well in dealing with chronic illness. I didn't want to be, on the one hand, someone who denies they have an illness, or on the other hand, to join the camp of people who battle cancer. It's an individual preference but I find that for me, the battle mode isn't all that sustainable, and more importantly, it doesn't bring me to the right place for healing. Enter the Cherokee Fear Bowl exercise. I believe this exercise would be helpful for anyone who is experiencing fear. I also believe that fear is something that we need to work on as a culture. We live in a time and a place in which many people in power seek to manipulate others by increasing their fears. But this story is about my own journey. So without further ado, here are my favorite fears and what I learned during the process of working on them last fall. I call them my favorites because we spend so much quality time together. I love to chase them through nighttime sessions when I should be sleeping. Number 1, I am afraid of being unlovable. I suspect that the fear of being unlovable is actually quite common, although most people would not want to admit to it. Where does it come from? For some, it will be early childhood experiences or traumatic experiences later in life. I think for me, it's been a long-term case of just not feeling like I belonged, like I stuck out in any group. I decided after thinking about it that the real antidote to this fear is to put love out there in the world. We become lovable when we direct love to others. Over the past few years, while I've been in treatment for cancer, a lot of people, friends and family, have directed love to me in various ways. Though I feared being unlovable, my illness revealed that the opposite was true. It's been hard to always return that love by doing all the things I need to do to maintain the relationships. Let's agree, relationships are a lot of work. On the day that I drew the slip, I did a number of things to nurture my relationships with people. I called and emailed a number of family and friends who had been supporting me. I volunteered at my local food pantry and made sure that I interacted with people in an authentic way. Finally, I spent time with my son. I took a short bike ride with him and went swimming, and made sure that I really had fun with him. I found that the process of directing love outward towards others brought me energy, even though I wasn't feeling particularly well that day, and it brought vitality and joy into my life. By just taking time to notice the love that has been directed to me and returning that love, it made me feel better. Number 2, I'm afraid of emotional intimacy. I notice that there's a relationship between the fear of being unlovable and the fear of emotional intimacy. I had a long think about the ways in which I push back against certain people in my life. It's too easy when encountering a difficult person to say, I'm different, I'm not like that. But the truth is that there's not that much difference between us. We are all part of the same fabric of life. On this day, I ended up talking to my brother. I had a long phone conversation with him. In the past, I've regarded him as opposite to me in terms of temperament. Now I notice many more similarities. After years of tacit separation, my illness has brought us closer together. We still might not always get along, but I know that we are part of the same story, the story of our family and starting out in the world, as well as continuing through life's challenges. Our lives change when we open ourselves to intimacy, when no matter how different people are, we acknowledge that we have similarities and we are part of the same rich story. Number 3, I am afraid I will not be able to heal myself. Now, most people would worry that their doctors are not going to be able to heal them. But over the years, I've done a number of alternative practices to heal myself, with mixed results. From time to time, I fear that none of it will work and that the investment of time and energy will be for naught. I decided to work on this fear by directing healing towards another person. Coincidentally, on this day that I drew the fear, I was scheduled to go to Madison for a shamanic healing ceremony for another woman who was having severe health problems of her own. With other students from a shamanic group, we danced and sang. During the ceremony, my face got flushed, and this is probably more than you want to know, I got really hot and sweaty. I felt as if I was channeling healing energy for that person. Afterwards, the woman said that I really helped her. Opening up in this way is not easy for me. Generally, I'm a careful planner. I like to work out all the details ahead of time, and this makes it hard to be spontaneous. But on this day, I did succeed in opening up to a higher power. I found that there's a big difference between asking for healing energy for yourself and asking it for another person. And this is why it helps so much to help another person. I know most people think of healing as an end state, but there's a difference between being cured and receiving healing. I know I've received healing already. I might not ever be completely cured, but perhaps that's not the most important goal. I definitely need to let go of my fear and become part of that story of healing. Number 4, I am afraid to die. Now we get to the real nitty-gritty of things. I think you're beginning to see how intense this process is for me. I actually do think that the next life will be okay, and that I'll be okay, whatever happens. It's more the process of getting there that freaks me out. Needless to say, I did not want to explore this fear by actually dying. So I chose to work on the fear by having a day when I lived intensely and completely. On the day that I drew this fear, I did some garden work, harvested onions, peppers, and beans. 2018 started out as just about the worst gardening season ever, until this year. My community garden in Fond du Lac was flooded in the spring and got a late start. When everyone else was planting their plot, mine remained flooded, and finally I had to switch plots. When I planted this garden, I sang a blessing song over the seeds. And lo and behold, though many things went wrong and the weeds were a bit out of control, I still got crops. In my experience, nature always provides for us. Faith in life, faith in nature has always sustained me, and it still sustains me. Finally, near sunset, I also went for a walk into the El Dorado Marsh. I felt that I was in the green heart of summer. I watched the birds flying and the muskrats building. Every living being was doing what it was in its nature to do, and everything was in the right place. As I reflected on the day, I noticed that if we pay attention, life is all around us. Life comes to claim us. I feel that my mind and my heart are here as part of this earth. Number 5, I am afraid to lose my hair. Yes, it's true, like many cancer patients, I was afraid of losing my hair. Unlike a lot of other people, for a long time I took targeted medications which did not cause hair loss. It's not hard to understand where the fear of hair loss comes from. Hair says a lot about how we present ourselves in the world and is highly associated with women's sexuality and femininity. On the day that I drew this fear, I was a little unsure of how to engage with the fear. Was I supposed to shave my head in order to confront my fear of hair loss? That seemed like an extreme step. I chose instead to cover up my head with a bandana so that I could experience what it would be like to wear a head covering. And surprisingly, that was all that was needed to relieve my fear and feel empowered. Some part of my soul settled into place when I put on that bandana, and I left it on for a couple of hours. Several months on, I finally experienced hair loss. I ran out of effective treatment options late last year, and in January, I started taking Taxol, an IV chemo drug. Every cancer patient who experiences hair loss makes their own choices about whether to wear a wig or, alternatively, some other form of head covering. All of those choices are good. For myself, I chose to wear hats and headscarves so that I could be more visible as a cancer patient. I'm not afraid to look a little funny. Because of that bandana, I chose to be a little bit more out there in the world. Number 6. I am afraid to follow my intuition. Early on in my treatment, I read a book called Radical Remission, which is about people who decide to give up conventional treatments in preference to alternative methods such as dietary changes and spiritual work. I read several stories about people who had followed their intuition in a way that many of us would consider over the top. They walked out of their doctor's office when they felt like the doctor wasn't listening to them, or else they refused operations or treatments because an inner voice warned them against those options. Well, let me tell you, that sort of thing scares the pants off of me. I'm definitely fond of the analytical part of my brain. I have my intuitive side, yet since adulthood I've often ignored my intuition to my detriment. In my favorite book, Jane Eyre, the protagonist leaves her home in the middle of the night with nothing but a few coins in her pocket. This is after the Mad Woman in the Attic episode. She receives a strong inner prompting that she has to leave. She knows that her survival depends on leaving Mr. Rochester before he can lead her into temptation. She quickly uses up her money and nearly starves to death, only to be rescued by 3 people who turn out to be her cousins. She stays away from Rochester until intuition leads her back again. Now, most people don't behave like this in real life, of course, and Jane's only 18 at the time. Though mature for her age, she still acts on her impulses without a thought of long-term consequences like penury or death. So Jane Eyre has always been my gold standard. The problem is I'm not 18. I'm middle-aged and have a strong sense that my actions might have unfortunate results. If I make the wrong choice, I could die. That ups up the stakes a little bit. It puts incredible pressure on me, and fear shuts down my mind. So on this day that I drew the statement, I am afraid to follow my intuition, I was at our local food pantry where I work as a volunteer. As I sorted through old produce, I reflected that I use my intuition all the time. I make gut-level decisions about what to throw out and what to save. So in a way, I do use my intuition. I just don't recognize it as such. But I can craft that, using and trusting intuition on a daily basis until I gain confidence in myself again. There's the big guns kind of intuition, the kind we use to make major life decisions. But there's also the daily intuition we use in our relationships, or to cook really good food, or figure out what's wrong with a sick child. Whenever we just know about things, that's intuition. Sometimes the best lessons are the easiest ones. Practice, patience, love yourself and what you are given. Number 7, I am afraid that I have nothing to give. Where does this fear come from? Sometimes I just feel that my particular gifts are not those that are needed, or that I'm not talented enough to make a difference in the world, or that I'm too stingy to give up more than a little of myself. But now the stakes are higher. What if I leave this world without a legacy? For some reason, this fear reminds me of The Brothers Karamazov, the book by Dostoevsky. One of the stories told in the book is about an old woman, a sinner, who dies and is cast into a fiery lake. But her guardian angel intervenes on her behalf, asking God for her salvation. During life, her sole act of goodness was to give an onion to a beggar woman. God says, "Give her the onion and see if she can hold on to it. If she can be saved." So the guardian angel extends the onion to the old woman, and she grabs onto it. Unfortunately, everyone else in the fiery lake also grabs on to the woman's ankles. As she tries to shake them all off, the onion breaks and she returns to the fiery lake. I'm sure that the author's take-home message is that selfishness can often be our undoing, but there are other important elements in the story as well, hiding in the background. First of all, the onion, that one gift, could have saved the old woman. What if she hadn't pushed the other sinners away? I think we'd have to acknowledge the possibility that the sinners could all rise together. Secondly, the woman has a guardian angel, an advocate who is watching out for her. What did she do to deserve that angel? Maybe all of us are born with a guardian angel and plenty of onions to give. And every onion has unlimited potential. Compared to this old lady, I think I'm doing okay. As a vegetable farmer, I definitely gave plenty of onions. And the chances are good that I have more to give than I've considered. On the day that I drew this fear, I went on a long bike ride into the Kettle Moraine, a few days after a tornado went through. I went out into a state natural area where many trees had fallen down. I did a shamanic journey and asked for the earth to heal. Like other times I've been out in nature recently, I swear I feel a presence. Something ancient, something curious about me, checking me out to make sure I'm all right. I can't see anything, but I can feel it. I called on the spirits to heal the earth and bring the elements back into balance. The element of air seems to be seriously out of whack, part of a pattern with climate change. On my way home, I noticed an increase in my sense of smell. I smelled sawn logs from a long way off, the sweet tang of evergreens, a floral scent that doesn't seem to come from anywhere in particular. I biked on a trail that goes through fields of goldenrod, sumac turning red, asters, big blue stem. All the earth is ripening and turning gold. Giving changes us, it makes us more alive, and I know now that I have so much to give to the earth and to the loved ones around me. Number 8, I am afraid of pain. I must admit I'm afraid of pain. It's part of what drives evolution, the fear and the avoidance of pain and death. And there are some good reasons to be afraid of pain. Bone pain, the cancer is widespread through my skeletal system, is particularly nasty and difficult to control with pain medication. I fear that pain could finish me off by taking away my love of life and my drive to survive. On this day, I chose to remember how well my body is working right now. 4 years after diagnosis, I continue to have little pain beyond occasional discomfort in my lower back and hips. It's not a lot different from the normal back pain experienced by millions of middle-aged and older adults. So that's a good thing, and it's probably time to feel grateful for it. My body has served me faithfully for many years. Today, I notice every pain-free minute and how strong my body is and remains. Numbness or non-feeling is arguably better than pain, yet there are many young people who cut themselves or injure themselves in an effort to feel something, anything. Numbness is what we feel when our soul parts have fled through trauma and we can't get them back. I am blessed in that I've always been in touch with my body. I've never felt cut off from it. My pain, if I feel it, reinforces that I'm alive and fully in my body. Number 9, I am afraid to lose my child. Here things get nasty. The deep root of my fear is that death will take me away from my child, or that because of advancing disease, I will be unable to care for him. When I think about losing my son, it's a crazy, mixed-up cocktail of absolute panic, dread, anger, jealousy, and so on. The whole gamut. Love floats on top, like a decorative paper umbrella. That we might not have time together somehow puts incredible pressure on me to make sure that everything is perfect, that we never fight, that he can remember me as a kind and loving mother. Who knows what kids remember anyway? It's always a slightly warped version of the truth. Last fall, there were lots of tears from him and a lot of blaming. Some of the complaints were possibly meritorious, while others were a little ridiculous. There were a lot of comments like this: "Why are you being so critical? Why are you so hard on me?" And my personal favorite, "Why didn't you remind me to eat my jelly beans?" I'm not even sure where that last one came from. From time to time, we were quite frustrated with each other, but I thought I was doing okay, until the moment when I had to fill in a form for his school, and among other questions, answer this one: "What do you admire most about your son?" And I just didn't know what to say. On the day that I drew this fear, I purposefully made time to engage with my son in a lot of small ways. No reading at the dinner table, no nagging, spending time with him by going on a bike ride. I know that life boils down to a lot of little stuff. Next, I gave myself this task. Every day, write down something I like about my child on a slip of paper. I emptied out my bowl of fears and filled it up with love and admiration. I found that I have a lot to say. I like my son. Coincidentally, this is what works best with fear, to replace it with love. Because the opposite of fear is love, no matter what anyone says about being brave. And all of a sudden, I was lifted out of the pain and the fear and the misery. and this poem came to me, Lifted. There is a pond here, man-made, but it has a little soul all its own. I never tire of watching it, how it holds the light, how it translates the wind into something visible. I never tire of watching ripples fan out like 1,000 birds just in that moment before flight, when they launch themselves toward the sky, their wings beating against the water. And now I am tucked into the bosom of the world, like a dove tucked against a man's chest, inside his jacket. My tiny bird heart beating fast, but now gradually calming, slowed by the steady pulse of the world all around me. So those are my favorite fears, and I'm still working on them. I have made some progress. No matter what, this gets to be my beautiful adventure. And all my favorite fears, I own them. I came to realize that in order to give my body what it needs for healing, I need to let go of fear. What helped me most was seeing things as they really are, paying attention to the world around me, being patient with myself and loving myself, and letting that love spread outward. Love is like water. It might seem passive, but it goes where it can go. It has the power to wear down mountains and carve out rock. Love starts with self and spreads outward, through our families and our dear friends, to our communities, and to all living things in our world of connections. So if you want to see what happens when you let go of fear, it's just that. You take a journey toward love. Thank you. Blessed be.